what's up YouTube? Now I know a lot of people here have been having like nightmares about how bad their character is. Like the character is just a piece of crap and it literally can't kill anything. Like you're trying to do a map, it's super juiced, your character is not really doing the amount of damage it needs to. And a lot of times it's because you just need to use some Eldritch mods to make your gear better, namely the Strike additional enemies and then Pierce. So Eldritch mods are something new that were introduced to compete with the old influence mods, and I do think that it has a very good use case scenario, and it's probably the best for like mid-budget or something like that. So I'm gonna go over all of the Eldritch mods that you can use on the Lightning Strike character to improve it. Along the way, we're gonna discuss like how good these Eldritch mods are and how to actually craft with it and how to search for items so you can use the Orb of Conflict in order to get that juicy strike 2 additional nearby enemies. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll understand how to craft your gear, what mods you actually get, so your character is not a steaming pile of trash. So let's get straight into it. So first off, we have to answer the question, what are Eldritch mods? So Eldritch mods are the two new influences that they introduced, Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds. So in order to see what Eldritch mods are, we have to use PoEDB to look for all of the potential Eldritch mods. And this is something I get over and over again in my stream. How do I actually look for Eldritch mods? You go to PoEDB, you go to modifiers here, and then you go down here and then you have boots, body armor, helmets. So let's say the gloves, you have Dex gloves. You click on those, and now you go to Searing Exarch implicit and Eater of Worlds implicit. So these are two different mods, and they pretty much will replace the implicits on any item that you have, but you can have two of them, right? So there's two different type of Eldritch influences, Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds, and there's 6 total tiers for every mod. Now this part confuses a lot of people because of the fact that tiers are duplicated, right? And the fact of the matter is that if there wasn't duplicated, this would go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and strike 6 additional enemies would just be completely overpowered. So you must use an Orb of Conflict to get the mod to level 6. So there are 4 different orbs you could use, 1, 2, 3, 4, to put strike additional enemies nearby. So you can see here, if you go to your stash tab and you go to your Eldritch Currency tab, you see there are 4 different Ichors, right? So our Embers, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's Exceptional, Grand, Greater, and Lesser. So if you use the Grand Ichor and you hit the strike, then you'll be at this stage, so it's just a tier 4. And then you need to use the Orb of Conflict, which gets the mod to level 6, to 5 or 6, because there's no Ichor that actually rolls strike 2. So you always have to gamble with this orb, and this will increase the strength of one of the implicits and lowers the strength of another modifier. So what this means is that you need to have one that's T4 and another one that's whatever. And then the one that's T4 has to go from T4 to T5 in order for you to get strike 2 additional enemies, right? Now, this is pretty confusing. And that's purely because all of the T1 to 4 are all the same mods. So a lot of times you don't even know like which tier it is when you go buy an item if you're trying to use the Orb of Conflict. But there is a trick, and I'm going to show you how. So how to search for the Eldritch mods. We can use the trading website to search for the tier of the mod so we can look for potential Orb of Conflict candidates. So Lesser is T1, Greater is T2, Grand is T3, Exceptional T4. Exquisite and Perfect, which you need to get with the Orb of Conflict, are T5 and T6 respectively. And you will rarely find T4 variants on the trade site because no one really uses the Exceptional Ectors because they're too expensive, I think. So right here, you can see here I'm trying to find strike skill, targets, strike additional enemies. And then here, there's another modifier called Searing Exarch implicit modifier. So this is how you're actually able to find stuff to Orb of Conflict, right? So you go here, you see there's a drop-down menu of Lesser, Greater, Grand, Exceptional, Exquisite, Perfect. And that's the main problem with PoE and trade sites is that you have to like pretty much do this guessing game to find out where do you actually find how to search the tier of the modifiers, because it's actually just really hard to understand where to find unless you do some deep diving. So basically you type in this and then you're able to search for an Eldritch mod. And once you search for the Eldritch mod, you have to look at how you actually get to T5. So Orb of Conflict is not like the Maven Orb where it is always 50-50. I think personally, in my experience, it is 50-50 up until T4, right? So the chances for going to T3 to T4 is 50-50. T2 to T3 is also 50-50. But T4 to T5, I'm pretty sure is like 10% or 20% chance. It took me and many other people in my chat to use 20 Orb of Conflicts to go from T4 to T5 for +2 strike. And T3 to T4 seems like it might be 50-50. So the best way to do this is you buy T3 implicit and then you use the Orb of Conflicts to try to get to T5. And if the item goes below T3, you resell it. So the only cost of you doing this is the Orb of Conflict. So basically, you go into the trade site here, and then say you want to get the T3, right? So which is a grand. So you go buy these. They're pretty cheap, 40 chaos, 45 chaos. You want to get one with evasion base so you can roll suppression later on. So they're probably around like 80 chaos to 1 exalt. Now, after you buy this, you will spam the Orb of Conflict on it, and then you have a 50-50% chance to get to T5, T4. And then if you miss it, then you want to go, if it goes for T4 to T3, T3 to T2, then you want to sell it. If it goes for T3 to T4, you want to use the Orb of Conflict again to try to get from T4 to T5, and you want to repeat this process until you get back to T2 or you get to T5. If you get to T2, you want to sell this pair of gloves, and you could probably sell it for break-even cost generally. You might even sell it for more if you have some auto search or live search going on for a good base. And then you're pretty much only paying the Orb of Conflict cost to try to get to T5. So you can see here, Orb of Conflicts are kind of hard to buy in bulk, but they're around like 10 chaos each. So even if you say it takes you on average 20 Orb of Conflicts to go from T4 to T5, and it's a 50-50 to go from T3 to T4, that's 40 Orb of Conflicts. And 40 Orb of Conflicts on average is around 4 exalts. And if you look at how much Strike 2 gloves actually are, on here, Strike 2 gloves are exceptionally expensive, and they cost around 8 to 10x or 10x. So you will be making a good chunk of change, and this all depends on how much you're spending to get the Orb of Conflicts, right? But regardless, it should be better to do this method just to craft it yourself. But the problem is that it might be very, very expensive. It's not very expensive. It's very, very time consuming to buy all of the Orb of Conflicts. As you may recognize in PoE, almost everything in the PoE is trying to bother you with inconvenience, and that's how they actually get you. So a lot of people could probably do this if there was a bulk currency auction house, but because you have to buy a bunch of Orb of Conflicts one by one and have to buy the item bases, time is money, so you have to weigh whether you want to do this method or not. But this is how you can get Strike 2 gloves pretty easily by using the trade search. But now let's go over the actual best Eldritch mods for every single piece of our gear. So for gloves, no brainer. Siri Exarch Strike additional nearby enemies is mandatory, so that's what we'll be using. So if you want to try to get that, you have to use the red currency orb. Eater of Worlds, you can get Pierce or percent chance to suppress spell damage. Now, something to note is that there's a mod weighting on everything. So you can see here Pierce is 500, but suppress spell damage is 1000. So it's going to be much, much easier to roll spell damage, suppress spell damage rather than Pierce. Strike additional nearby enemy is also 500, so that's why some of these mods will be a lot harder to roll. I do think that these are the best. Percent chance of spell damage suppress is probably going to be better than Pierce. Pierce is more of an early game craft that you'll use while you don't have access to a lot of Pierce, whether it's through Red of Hope or through your boots. But Eldritch gloves are pretty simple. You want to get strike additional nearby and suppress spell damage, and it's not too hard to get both of them. The Eldritch mod for boots are a little bit different. Boots are probably not going to be the best slot for Eldritch mods. Eldritch mods will probably get you a mid-tier boots, but Elevated Tailwind and Elevated Onslaught boots are probably still going to be the best option. But if you have Elevated Tailwind and Onslaught boots, it's going to be a lot harder to get resistant spell suppression, purely because Elevated Tailwind and Elevated Onslaught are both suffixes, right? But Eldritch mods do allow you to have a sort of a budget Tailwind. You have Siri Exar, which gives you reduced action speed, and this is up to 6%. And up to 6% is like 60% of the effect of Tailwind, with 25% effect, which is the elevated mod. And Tailwind is 10%, right? So it's 8% general base of Tailwind, and then 25% effect brings it to 10%. So Siri Exarch, you definitely want to be targeting this Tailwind effect. Eater of Worlds, you have two options. You can go for General's Cry cooldown recovery rate, or increased elusive effect. It goes up to 17%, the elusive effect. And General's Cry cooldown recovery rate goes up to 32%, which is actually really, really high. So next up, we have Eldritch mods for chests. Now, there's a strong argument now with the new Eldritch mods that a rare chest might be better than Brass Dome due to easier times of getting spell suppression and access to maximum resistance now with Eldritch mods. So with the new Eldritch mod with the Syria Exar, you can actually get max res up to 2%, which makes the difference between Brass Dome and a rare chest only 3% max res. Now, if you want to go for full damage, you can get percent crit multi for attack damage. For Syria Exar, which goes up to 31%. Percent increased effect of non-curse auras also goes up to 20%, which also helps out your defenses a lot. But the main thing you want to get is max res up to 2%. So Eater of Worlds, you have aura effect up to 36%, which is massive for a specific aura. So you can choose Determination or Anger or Grace. You can also get some resistances to make you more capped. This goes up to 16%. You can get percent block or spell block, which is up to 10%, which is pretty good damage reduction. Armor up to 28%. So these are mostly defensive options. So keep in mind, like if you use a rare chest, you can get life. You can get the percent life mod. You can get 31% spell suppression, and then you could probably also get another resist mod or strength. And you could probably get like 1,500 armor or so, or 2,000 armor with a max roll. So it's definitely a very, very viable option, and a lot of people might say it's better. But Brass Dome does give you this crit immunity, and it also gives you 4,000 armor, and it does give you 3% more max res. But it is like a loss of 500 life, so you just have to weigh what you value more. Now, for Eldritch mods for helmets, it's just a nope. Just no, 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 no. You do not want a helmet with Eldritch mods because Blizzard Crown is too good. Blizzard Crown Implicit is just too good to replace, and most of the Eldritch mods for helmets are honestly really bad. I looked through all of them, and none of them really beats out a Blizzard Crown. So what you want is just use a Blizzard Crown with Shaper mod, increased elemental damage taken, and this is pretty much really easy to make because you could just Awaken Orb to get a global crit multi, or nearby enemies take elemental damage, or you can reforge with crit with a Warlords and Shaper base once you have this mod on there. So it's super, super easy to make, and it shouldn't cost you too much, and it will be a lot better than any Eldritch mod helmet. I think I actually forgot to finish typing out this. But basically, Blizzard Crown OP 82 to 128 flat cold damage is impossible to beat with any Eldritch mods currently. So endgame helmet, definitely Berserk effect on the enchant. Blizzard Crown for the flat cold implicit, and then you want the Shaper mod guaranteed. When nearby enemies take 9% increased elemental damage because this is a multiplier. You can reforge crit to get multi with suffixes cannot be changed. Or you can Awaken Orb together, multi, and nearby enemies take 9% elemental damage. Either way will work just fine. So, and then you have the prefixes left open. So the prefixes should be pretty easy to craft because these two are suffixes. So you can never fully brick the helmet. And then you'll just have a random suffix that will be given to you based on what Chris Wilson wants to give you. As you can see here, this helm has increased stun and block recovery. Let's see overall what I actually think about all of these Eldritch mods and crafting. So in the end, you have this arm wrestling contest going on between Influence mods and Eldritch mods. You can see here, this is Eldritch mods, and this is pretty much he's happy because early game, he's probably a lot stronger. Late game, this guy is going to come back and just arm wrestle him to death. But Eldritch mods can compete with double influence items for most slots until you reach items with 3 to 4 influence mods, but those are prohibitively expensive. So, like gloves, for instance, like even though the Eldritch mod is really good, you can't really beat +1 Frenzy with Coaling or something like that. But it is very, very close. And the biggest upside is that an Eldritch mod item will have 6 good mods on it. So you'll have life, and you have 3 resist, and you'll probably have another crafted mod on there that's super super strong. And this is something to consider. I do think that some items Eldritch mods will come out ahead of, and that's probably the gloves slot. But boot slot, I don't think you'll ever be able to beat double influence boots. The crafting system with Eldritch mods is also extremely fun as you can never fully break the item. You just keep going and going, and the item stays the same. You don't really need to worry about the item completely disappearing. Like if you Awaken Orb an item together, your item is pretty much bricked, right? I hope that GGG trends towards this type of crafting experience because it's a lot more enjoyable. You see a lot more people putting on Eldritch mods on their gear because it's pretty much a free roll and it doesn't really brick it. So like this is the opposite of Scourge, right? Scourge, we had it so that if you Scourge your item, you actually completely brick it and you can actually completely brick your build. So it's nice to see that GGG is learning their lessons and that this might translate over to making the ARCHNEMESIS inventory better. Now, Eldritch crafting with Eldritch Chaos, Eldritch Exalt, and Eldritch Annul is also very, very powerful. You can pretty much manipulate items, so you can always target Exalt, target suffix removal, or target prefix removal, or you could target prefixes cannot be changed, and then reforge or reforge while keeping suffixes. And I do think that this is a very underrated method right now, and this allows people to create really, really good rares with 6 mods on non-influence items for very, very cheap. And I don't think that these currency items will be that expensive because people are, what's it called? People farm these at a very high rate. But hopefully these answers all the questions about the Eldritch mods. I do think that Eldritch mods is a very good system, and I do think that it adds a lot of depth to our crafting experience and early to mid game gear acquirement. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more Meters, Exalts, and Mageblood to be. And hopefully you win your arm wrestling contest against Chris Wilson. And I'll see you next time. Bye.